Today we are at the grave marker of Japanese Army Colonel Heiji Sato. This was the commander of the final Japanese infantry attack on the last defense line at Tsingtao on November 6, 1914. Great Britain and Japan entered into an alliance from 1902 to 1923. It was entered through mutual interests and served Japan particularly well in their war with Russia, preventing the French from assisting the Russians, as that would mean war between Britain and France. As Japan gained more power in Asia, at this time particularly over Korea, America did not approve of the arrangement, and Australia didn't feel comfortable with it either. Canada would also not approve of it in 1919, following the First World War, due to Japanese expansion interests. The 553 Treaty, part of the Washington Treaty on Naval Limitations, allowed Japan parity with the great naval powers, Britain and America, as they had to spread their fleets over many oceans. The alliance was ended in 1923 due to conflicting alliance pressures and mutual distrust. In the First World War, however, the alliance was solid and enabled the Allies to take the German port of Tsingtao, as well as defeat the German East Asia Squadron. Japanese naval ships also served in the Mediterranean Sea, and 77 Japanese sailors are buried in Malta. Now for the story of Germany in Asia, before and during World War I. The German East Asia Squadron. The German East Asia Squadron was an Imperial German Navy squadron that varied in size and strength that operated between the mid-1890s and 1914. From 1888 to 1892, the flagship was the cruiser Leipzig. It mostly operated from East Africa. It operated with smaller cruisers, the SMS Carola, SMS Schwalbe, and the SMS Sperber. They had two small gunboats, Iltis and Wolf. Its commander was Rear Admiral Valois. They had no home port and moved around from Nagasaki, Hong Kong, and Singapore. SMS Sophie and SMS Alexandrine joined them later. Other ships joined the squadron, and the commander eventually changed to Hoffmann, who depended on the British at Hong Kong. Finally, in 1897, the port of Tsingtao was leased to Germany, and the squadron, under Rear Admiral von Dietrichs, moved there. In 1898, the Austrian battleship Kaiserin Augusta arrived, with a sea battalion of German Marines. The colonization of the base began its full efforts. Along with the port, some amenities came for the garrison, such as a brewery. The squadron participated in the Boxer Rebellion from 1900 to 1902. They managed to capture the port of Tientsin. They tried, but failed, to relieve the foreign contingent, along with the other Western units at Peking, also known as Beijing. Older ships were eventually retired, and when 1914 came, there were 6 major warships with an assortment of smaller ships. One ship was Austrian. The commander was Vice Admiral Graf von Spee. At the beginning of the war, he was quite worried due to being cut off from supplies and any kind of help. He says, "I am quite homeless. I cannot reach Germany. We possess no other secure harbor. I must plow the seas of the world, doing as much mischief as I can, until my ammunition is exhausted, or foe far greater than power succeeds in catching me." That's from Vice Admiral Graf von Spee. He detached the light cruiser Emden to the Indian Ocean. This ship was very successful, sinking 29 ships, and sank the Russian cruiser Zemchug and the French destroyer Muscat. She destroyed oil storage facilities at Madras and kept fighting until November 9, 1914, when it was sunk by the HMAS Sydney at the Battle of the Cocos. Vice Admiral von Spee decided to make a run back to Germany with most of his ships. The autumn of 1914 saw the cruisers in many small actions across the Pacific, with various ships separated and interned due to mechanical problems. On November 1st, 1914, the German squadron met a British squadron of about equal size and sank 2 British cruisers, the HMS Good Hope and the HMS Monmouth. The squadron continued onwards, but met another British squadron on December 8, 1914. The Battle of the Falklands was a disaster for the Germans. Only a few ships escaped destruction and escaped to the Pacific. 4 small gunboats were scuttled at Tsingtao. 4 small river boats operated in Chinese rivers until 1917. Germany had territories, mostly islands, throughout the Pacific. These were the Bismarck Archipelago, Caroline Islands, the Line Islands, German New Guinea, German Samoa, Guam, Mariana Islands, Marshall Islands, Tahiti, and Massa Tierra. Tsingtao was the only well-fortified position. 3,650 German troops, 1,000 Chinese troops, 4 German gunboats, and an Austrian battleship were there. Most islands were taken without a battle by New Zealand and Japanese forces. Australians had a harder time. At the Battle of Bitapaka in September 1914, 500 Australians fought with 300 German and native policemen. The Germans retreated to Toma, where they surrendered. By 1915, only a small group of Germans under Hermann Detzner were left in the area, but they held out on the island until the end of the war. The last German warship to surrender was of the SMS Cormorant at Guam on April 7, 1917. It was scuttled to avoid capture by the USS Supply. These were also the first shots fired by US forces in World War I. The Siege of Tsingtao, also known as Qingdao, this was the site of the most major battle in the Pacific during World War I. It took place from October 31st to November 7th, 1914. The Allied forces were commanded by General Mitsuomi Kamio of the 18th Infantry Division and Admiral Kato Sadakichi commanding most of the Japanese Navy. The British contingent, mostly Welsh, were commanded by Brigadier General Nathaniel Bernardston. The Japanese force had 23,000 infantry, the British had 1,500 infantry. The German defenders had 3,650 infantry, 324 Austrians, and 100 Chinese police. The Japanese fleet had 1 seaplane carrier, 5 battleships, 2 battle cruisers, 2 destroyers, and a few aircraft. The German fleet had 1 Austrian battleship, named the Kaiserin Elizabeth, 1 cruiser, 1 torpedo boat, and 4 gunboats. They also had 1 aircraft. The German East Asia Squadron had already left in its attempt to get back to Germany. When war began in August 1914, Britain immediately requested its ally, Japan, for assistance. On 15th August 1914, Japan sent an ultimatum to Germany to withdraw its warships from Asia and turn over Tsingtao to Japan. The ultimatum expired on August 24th, and General Kamio was ordered to prepare to take Tsingtao. Japan then declared war on Germany. The port and town were divided from the rest of the peninsula by steep hills. This became the first line of defense. A second line was made along a closer line of hills, and the final line was along the hills immediately next to the town, with trenches, batteries, and other fortifications. Mines were laid around the harbor, and there were 4 batteries and 5 redoubts. They were well equipped and manned. On 27th August, the Japanese Navy began with the blockade of Kiao Chau. The British Navy sent the pre-dreadnought HMS Triumph to assist with a destroyer. The Triumph was damaged by German shore batteries. During this battle, the Japanese fleet would have a first, with the seaplanes being the first in history to attack both sea and land targets from the carrier Wakamiya. They also did the first nighttime bombing raid from a carrier. The Japanese 18th Infantry Division landed first around 29 kilometers east of Tsingtao with 142 artillery pieces. They landed on September 2nd. They landed again and closer to Tsingtao on September 18th. The British landed their small forces too. They were the 2nd Battalion South Wales Borderers, 500 Sikhs, and a few other Empire troops. The Kaiser forbade the German garrison to surrender. It would shame me more to surrender Tsingtao to the Japanese than Berlin to the Russians, he said. German Naval Commander Alfred Mayer Waldeck had to try to hold the port. As the Japanese troops approached the outer line of German defenses, the Germans withdrew to the inner, strongest line, next to the town. On September 2nd, the German gunboat Jaguar sank the Japanese destroyer Shidotai. On September 6th, the first air-sea battle in history took place when a seaplane from the Wakamiya unsuccessfully attacked the Kaiser and Elizabeth. On September 28th, the Jaguar sank the Japanese cruiser Takashio. The guns of the Austrian battleship were removed to form the Battery Elizabeth, and the crew became defenders of Tsingtao. The Japanese then took all the surrounding small towns and ports. The weather then started getting bad. The Germans then scuttled the Cormoran, Iltis, and Lux on September 28th. On October 17th, the torpedo boat S-90 slipped out and sank the Japanese cruiser Takashio. The ship was scuttled after it ran out of fuel. Tiger was scuttled on October 29th. Kaiser Elizabeth was scuttled on November 2nd. The heroic ship Jaguar was finally scuttled on November 7th when the port was finally surrendered. The main siege began on October 31st. It was done by digging parallel trenches and artillery barrages, similar to the Western Front in Europe. The Japanese barrage of the German lines then went on day and night, as the Japanese forces dug trenches closer to the German lines. Then, the German guns started to go silent. They were running out of ammunition. The ammunition for artillery totally ran out on November 6th. A single German airplane then escaped the siege with final dispatches for Germany on November 6th. The German pilot shot down a Japanese plane with his pistol, claiming the first aviation victory in history. On the night of November 6th, a Japanese infantry attack led by Japanese Colonel Sato overwhelmed the defenders, bringing an end to the battle. The Germans surrendered on November 7th, 1914. Colonel Sato was seriously wounded in the attack and was evacuated to Japan. When he died, he was buried here at Omura Castle, Nagasaki Prefecture. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses row on row that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead, short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw, the torch be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. They shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Ladies and gentlemen, to the fallen of Germany, Japan, and Britain in the First World War, the Queen. Cheers.